Good evening. Thank you, Peg, and thank you all for being here. And thanks, Peg, especially for moving me from September to tonight for schedule problems. I'm really glad to be here. And I would like to dedicate this reading to Buster Posey and Sergio Romo. I'm going to read from a chapter from Indian Voices, Listening to Native Americans. I always tell Native audiences that the main word in the title is listening. They're always pleased to hear that, as opposed to telling Indian people what to do. Oh, that's what I'm doing. This book is comprised of interviews with Native people all over the country about life today. That's the basic subject. And I decided to read tonight from a chapter called Indian Humor by Carol Craig, about Carol Craig. She's a Yakama Indian, and Yakama are in Washington State. Is there a joke within the infinity labeled Indian humor that Carol Craig does not know? All attempts to stump her have failed. Okay, how about this one under the heading, Don't Mess with Indian Women, which I forwarded from a Native website. A Native man with 6 beautiful children is so proud of his achievement, he starts calling his wife Mother of 6, despite her objections. One night at a party, when it's time to leave, he shouts across the room, "Shall we go home, my little mother of 6? His irritated wife shouts back, "Anytime you're ready, father of 4. Emailed in response, "That was always a good one," and said she first heard it in the early 1990s. To receive Carol's humor is a private pleasure, but to see it affect a wider audience is a measure of the woman. Picture hundreds of people gathered in a Seattle airport hotel banquet room for the Native Women's Leadership Development Forum. They had bowed their heads for the opening prayer and listened to panels about the challenges of nurturing women in the arts and education. They had heard the keynote speech about Native youth, including the wrenching problem of teen suicide. Later in the day, the program read, they would hear from Native women who established a Cancer Survivors Network. They would also hear about upcoming canoe journeys. Could that be the day's one high? What began as a program called Paddle to Seattle to mark Washington's centennial is now an annual celebration. Members of Washington and Canadian nations paddle some 80 dugout canoes for weeks, stopping at reservations and ending triumphantly at or near the host tribe's reservation. The year I saw the journey's thrilling end, the host was Carol's maternal tribe, the Muckleshoot, outside Seattle. I'll just say parenthetically, it's a very formal introduction into the tribe. The dugout canoe comes to the shore and asks formally for permission to land, and then the chairman or the chief of the welcoming nation says, "Yes, you are welcome." But the time I saw it, one guy in the dugout canoe said, "Yes, we would like permission to land, and many of us really need to use the bathroom," which is partly typical Native humor. Anyway, I cut that out. Canoe participants today would talk of commitment and preparation, then display copious planning notes, such as best time to arrive with current and safety equipment lists. Then one participant would break down, describing how canoe journeys help cure her addiction. "I'm still facing the battle of my temptations." Another would describe the pink canoe paddles publicizing breast cancer awareness. In sum, the day's prevalent tone was solemn. The Enduring Spirits Honoring Luncheon portended nothing less. Oh dear, I thought, enduring. Yakama tribal member Carol Craig, endurer number 1, was called to the podium. In her late 50s, a bit short, a bit stout, her gray hair and smooth page boy, Carol was introduced as Public Information Manager for the Yakama Fisheries Program. as an educator, journalist, and public speaker, particularly on the subject of tribal rights, treaty rights, and as someone who helped fellow Washingtonians, the Macaw, manage the uproar over tribal plans to kill a whale. After accepting the award and applause, she acknowledged her widowed 84-year-old mother beaming at her from a nearby table. Then, within sentences, Carol proceeded to change the day's mood. How about those clueless non-natives she encounters in her work? College students asked me, "Are you full-blooded?" The audience held its collective breath at this, one of the rudest questions non-native ask. I say, "Nope, I'm a pint short, just came back from the Red Cross." The room exploded. And I'm going to read just a tiny bit more. Carol was a very active spokesperson for the Yakima Fisheries program. She's doing other things now. But she always struggled to find work. And she became a pool hustler at one point. She said, we kicked butt. She and another Native woman were really, really good. And she said when men tried the pickup line, "What is your astrological sign?" she said, "Dollar." And she, I'm saying in a more sophisticated ruse, she and a Yakima friend named Gwen, both single mothers, needing food money, worked as a team. First, they scoped out the pool holes clientele. If they saw a lot of men, Gwen would go in alone and challenge them to a game. Then I would walk in and challenge her. The men would start betting. After Carol, or Gwen, collected the money from whichever men bet on her, she left. The loser, so-called loser, later followed her to a designated spot where they split the winnings. And I'm going to tell you one more joke. I'm feeling a little rowdy tonight, so this might be a little beyond what some of you feel comfortable with. But one other thing about Native people is that I didn't know. I started from ignorance when I began this book. What I did not know that traditionally Native societies were very, very accepting of gay people. There was hardly any homophobia. There may be today because they're part of the United States of America, but in general, Native people were considered blessed by the Creator to be a little different. So there was not this homophobia that you see in non-Native societies. Anyway, so this has to do a little bit with that. For pleasure, when she wasn't trying to hustle a pool, Carol played softball. She accepted an invitation to join a team of gay girls, as she called them, and in the process gained more friends and joke material. They had a great sense of humor, so we'd sit around and laugh and talk. I'd tell a tribal gay joke, one that a gay tribal guy loved, she said. Carol made me promise I would not be offended. I mean, she made me promise for like 5 minutes I would not be offended. I said, I'm living here in San Francisco, I'm not going to be offended. Anyway, she said, okay. Do you know what you call a tribal gay guy? No. One brave sucker. Thank you.